I thought my wedding day would be about love, unity, and new beginnings. Instead, it became a battlefield where two women I cherish most decided to settle a score that had been brewing for months. What started as whispered tensions exploded into something so wild, so completely unhinged, that guests are still talking about it 3 years later. You know that sinking feeling when you realize your perfect day is about to become someone else's revenge fantasy? That's exactly where I found myself, standing in my wedding dress, watching my mother and future mother-in-law circle each other like prizefighters in the hotel ballroom where I was supposed to be the happiest woman alive. Let me back up. My name is Sarah, and I'm 32. I work as a pediatric nurse, which means I'm used to managing chaos, mediating between difficult personalities, and staying calm under pressure. These skills, I thought, would serve me well in wedding planning. I was wrong. Dead wrong. The trouble started 6 months before the wedding when both mothers insisted on being involved in every single decision. My mom, Linda, is a retired school principal who believes in order, tradition, and doing things the proper way. She raised me and my two sisters with iron discipline wrapped in fierce love. After Dad passed when I was 25, she became even more protective, more invested in making sure we girls had the perfect life moments she felt we deserved. Then there's my future mother-in-law, Patricia. Patricia owns 3 successful hair salons, drives a Mercedes, and has opinions about everything from place settings to the proper height of centerpieces. She's glamorous in that way that comes from money and good genetics, always perfectly put together, always ready with a comment about how things could be elevated or refined. David, my fiancé, is Patricia's only child. She waited until she was 38 to have him, and she's never let anyone forget that he's her miracle baby, her greatest achievement, her reason for living. When we got engaged, she made it clear that she had very specific ideas about what kind of wedding her son deserved. The first red flag should have been the venue meeting. I wanted something simple, elegant, maybe at the botanical garden where David proposed. Both mothers showed up with completely different visions. Mom pushed for the country club where she dreamed of hosting her daughter's weddings since we were little. Patricia insisted on the luxury resort an hour outside the city, complete with helicopter arrivals and champagne fountains. Sarah's always been a simple girl, Mom said, her voice tight with that particular strain that appears when she's trying very hard to be polite. She doesn't need all this excess. Patricia's laugh had sharp edges. Oh, Linda, I think you're underestimating what Sarah wants for her special day. This is David's wedding too, and he's accustomed to a certain standard. I watched them size each other up across the mahogany conference table while the wedding planner pretended to review her notes. The tension was thick enough to cut with the cake knife I hadn't even picked out yet. We compromised on the historic hotel downtown. Grand enough for Patricia, traditional enough for Mom, and expensive enough to drain my savings account. I thought that would be the end of it. Instead, it was just the beginning. The dress shopping expedition was next. I made the mistake of inviting both mothers, thinking it would be a bonding experience. My younger sister Emma came along as backup, sensing disaster with her usual sharp instincts. At the first boutique, I tried on a simple A-line dress with delicate lace sleeves. It was exactly what I'd always pictured myself wearing. I felt beautiful, confident, like myself but elevated. It's perfect, I said, turning to face them. Mom's eyes filled with tears. Oh, sweetheart. You look just like I always imagined. Patricia pursed her lips. It's very understated. Don't you think something with more presence would photograph better? The Harrington wedding had those gorgeous beaded gowns that absolutely sparkled in the professional photos. This isn't the Harrington wedding, Emma said quietly, but I caught the warning in her voice. Of course not, Patricia backtracked smoothly. I just want Sarah to have every opportunity to shine. This dress is lovely, but perhaps we should look at a few more options. 3 hours and 12 dresses later, I was exhausted, confused, and no longer sure what I actually wanted. Mom kept pushing for classic elegance. Patricia kept suggesting more elaborate options with price tags that made my stomach clench. The saleswoman looked like she wanted to hide in the stockroom. Why don't we think about it? I finally said, desperate to escape. Patricia's voice followed us to the car. I hope you're not settling, dear. This is a once-in-a-lifetime day. That night, David found me crying over wedding magazines at our kitchen table. What's wrong? He asked, pulling me into his arms. Your mother thinks I'm settling. My mother thinks your mother is pushing me toward something I'm not. I just want to marry you without feeling like I'm disappointing everyone. He kissed the top of my head. Then let's elope. For a moment, the idea felt like salvation. Then I thought about Mom's dreams for her daughter's weddings, about Patricia's investment in her son's big day, about all the deposits we'd already put down. We can't, I said. Too many people are counting on this. David sighed. Then we'll get through it. It's just one day. Famous last words. The next few months were a delicate dance of compromises that satisfied no one. The flowers were elegant enough for Mom but expensive enough for Patricia. The menu was traditional enough for one, sophisticated enough for the other. I felt like a diplomat negotiating between two hostile nations, both claiming to have my best interests at heart. The breaking point came during the rehearsal dinner. We'd chosen a private dining room at an upscale restaurant, somewhere neutral where both families could get to know each other better. I should have known better. Everything started pleasantly enough. Both mothers were on their best behavior, complimenting the venue, asking polite questions about each other's work and hobbies. David's college friends were telling embarrassing stories. My sisters were charming everyone with their wit and warmth. Then Uncle Mike, Mom's brother, made an innocent comment about how excited the family was to welcome David. Linda's been planning her girls' weddings since they were in diapers, he laughed. She's got a whole scrapbook of ideas. Patricia's smile got a little sharper. How lovely. I suppose some mothers have more time to focus on wedding fantasies than others. I've been too busy building my business to indulge in scrapbooks, but I certainly have strong opinions about what makes an event truly memorable. The temperature in the room dropped several degrees. Emma shot me a look across the table that clearly said trouble ahead. Mom's voice stayed steady, but I recognized the tone. It was the same one she'd used with difficult parents during her teaching days. Oh, I wouldn't call caring about your children's happiness a fantasy. Some of us just prioritize differently. Absolutely, Patricia agreed with false sweetness. I've always believed in giving my son the tools to create his own success rather than living vicariously through his milestones. But different approaches work for different families. David reached for my hand under the table. His palm was sweating. The conversation moved on, but the damage was done. Both mothers spent the rest of the evening making subtle digs disguised as compliments, each trying to establish dominance without causing an outright scene. By the time dessert arrived, my head was pounding and my stomach was in knots. One more day, David whispered as we said goodnight to everyone. We just have to get through one more day. I should have taken that as a warning, not a comfort. The morning of the wedding dawned crisp and clear, one of those perfect October days when the leaves are at their peak and the air smells like possibility. I woke up in the bridal suite feeling cautiously optimistic. Maybe we'd gotten all the drama out of our systems. Maybe today would actually be about love and celebration. The morning preparations went smoothly. My bridesmaids arrived with coffee and pastries. The hair and makeup artists worked their magic while we laughed about old memories and took dozens of photos. Mom cried when she saw me in my dress, the simple A-line I'd fallen in love with at the first boutique. Even Patricia seemed genuinely moved when she arrived with David's grandmother's pearls for me to wear. You look absolutely radiant, she said, fastening the necklace around my throat. David is going to be speechless. For a moment I thought we'd turned a corner. Both mothers were being kind, helpful, focused on making the day special for me and David. The photographer captured beautiful shots of 3 generations of women getting ready together. Everything felt right. The ceremony was scheduled for 4 o'clock in the hotel's grand ballroom, with cocktails and dinner to follow in the adjacent spaces. As we moved from the bridal suite to the ceremony location, I felt that flutter of anticipation that meant something magical was about to happen. David looked incredible waiting for me at the altar. His smile when he saw me walking down the aisle made everything else fade away for a moment. This was what mattered. This moment, this commitment, this love we'd built together. The ceremony itself was perfect. We'd written our own vows, and David's voice broke when he promised to support my dreams and protect my heart. My own vows focused on partnership, adventure, and building something beautiful together. When the officiant pronounced us married, the kiss felt like a promise of all the good things to come. The cocktail hour buzzed with energy. Guests mingled between the ceremony and reception spaces, sipping champagne and admiring the fall decorations we'd chosen. Photos were taken, hugs were exchanged, and everyone seemed genuinely happy to be celebrating with us. I should have known it was too good to last. The first sign of trouble came during the receiving line. Patricia had positioned herself near the entrance to the reception hall, greeting guests like a co-hostess and making sure everyone knew how involved she'd been in planning the celebration. Mom was doing something similar from her strategic position near the bar, emphasizing different aspects of the day and subtly correcting some of Patricia's more embellished claims about her contributions. Sarah's mother and I worked so closely together on all the details, Patricia told my college roommate Jessica, while Mom was clearly within earshot. I think we managed to elevate her original vision into something truly spectacular. Mom's jaw tightened, but she kept smiling and greeting relatives. Emma sidled up to me during a brief break between photo sessions. "Houston, we have a problem," she murmured. "Mom and Patricia are playing territory games and the guests are starting to notice." I looked around the reception hall and saw what she meant. The two mothers had essentially divided the room into camps, with their respective families and friends clustering around them like opposing armies. The atmosphere was getting competitive rather than celebratory. "Maybe it'll settle down once dinner starts," I said hopefully. Emma gave me that look that meant I was being naively optimistic, but she didn't push it. "Just stay alert, okay? I've got a bad feeling about this." Dinner began beautifully. David and I were seated at the head table with our wedding party, looking out over a room full of people we loved. The food was delicious, the wine was flowing, and the conversation was lively. For about 30 minutes, I let myself believe we'd made it through the dangerous part. Then came the toasts. We'd planned for 3 speakers, David's best man, my maid of honor Emma, and both fathers together. Simple, traditional, brief enough to keep people's attention but meaningful enough to mark the occasion. The best man's toast was perfect. Funny without being embarrassing, sweet without being sappy, and short enough to leave people wanting more. Emma's toast had everyone in tears, talking about watching me find my perfect match and how excited she was to officially call David her brother. Then both fathers stood up together for the final planned toast. But before they could speak, Patricia rose from her seat at the parents' table. "If I may," she said, champagne glass in hand, "I'd like to say a few words about my son and his beautiful new wife." I saw Mom's expression change instantly. This wasn't part of the plan, and Patricia knew it. But what could we do? Tell the groom's mother she couldn't toast her son at his wedding? Patricia's toast started conventionally enough. She talked about David's childhood, his accomplishments, how proud she was of the man he'd become. But then it took a turn. I have to admit, when David first brought Sarah home, I wondered if she was sophisticated enough for my worldly son. Sarah comes from such a grounded background. But I've come to appreciate her simple, honest approach to life. Not everyone needs to aim for the stars when the ground level is perfectly adequate. The room went dead quiet. I felt David's hand tighten on mine under the table. Emma's eyes went wide with horrified fascination. But Patricia wasn't done. "I'm so glad Sarah's family was open to some guidance in planning this celebration. With my background in hospitality and event management through the salon business, I was able to help transform their original ideas into something truly worthy of the occasion. Sometimes it takes a village to create a vision, and I'm proud to have contributed to making this day as elegant as David deserves." She raised her glass with a triumphant smile, clearly pleased with her performance. Scattered, uncertain applause rippled through the room. Most guests looked uncomfortable, unsure how to respond to what felt more like a power play than a toast. That's when Mom stood up. "How lovely," she said, her voice carrying that deadly calm I remembered from my teenage years when I pushed her too far. "Since we're improvising toasts, I'd love to add a few words of my own." "Oh no. Oh no no no. Patricia, thank you so much for that illuminating perspective," Mom continued, her smile sharp enough to cut glass. "I think it's wonderful how invested you've become in Sarah and David's happiness. Of course, as Sarah's mother, I've been invested in her happiness for 32 years, so I have a slightly longer perspective on what she needs and deserves." The room was so quiet you could hear the air conditioning humming. I want to assure everyone that Sarah's family didn't need guidance to recognize quality or elegance. We simply believe that true class comes from treating people with respect and kindness, not from the size of your bank account or the number of businesses you own. Sarah's father, God rest his soul, taught our girls that genuine sophistication means lifting others up, not putting them down to make yourself look better. Patricia's face was flushing red. Several guests were filming with their phones. David looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. "Sarah has never needed anyone to elevate her," Mom continued, her voice getting stronger. "She's been elevating everyone around her since she was old enough to walk. She chose nursing because she wanted to heal people. She chose David because she loves him, not because of what family he comes from or what material advantages he could provide. And anyone who can't see that Sarah is sophisticated enough, accomplished enough, and good enough for any man on this planet clearly doesn't know her at all." Mom raised her own glass. "So here's to Sarah and David. May their marriage be built on mutual respect, genuine partnership, and the understanding that love doesn't need improvement from outsiders who think they know better. The applause that followed was enthusiastic and clearly divided along family lines. David's relatives looked shocked. My relatives looked fiercely proud. The friends were somewhere between fascinated and appalled. Patricia sat down heavily, her face now completely red. But I could see in her eyes that she wasn't backing down. She was regrouping. Well, she said loudly enough for nearby tables to hear, I suppose we all have different definitions of sophistication. Some people think working in service professions and living in modest circumstances is something to celebrate. Others believe in encouraging people to reach for more. That's when Emma stepped in. Patricia, she said sweetly, Sarah saves children's lives for a living. What exactly would you like her to reach for that's higher than that? I simply meant that she should have married someone whose mother has better manners? Emma continued, her voice still sugar-sweet but her eyes dangerous. Because honestly at this point I'm wondering what David reached for when he chose his family. The room erupted in shocked murmurs. David finally found his voice. Okay, everyone, let's maybe take a step back. No, Patricia interrupted, standing up again. I think it's time we cleared the air about a few things. I have tried to be gracious about this entire situation, but I'm tired of being attacked for caring about my son's future. Nobody's attacking you for caring, Mom said, also standing. We're calling you out for being condescending and rude to my daughter on what's supposed to be the happiest day of her life. I have never been rude to Sarah. You told a room full of people that she wasn't sophisticated enough for your son. I said she came from a different background. You said she was adequate. You called her simple. I meant it as a compliment. The argument was escalating rapidly, with both women now facing each other across the reception hall. Other guests were standing, some trying to mediate, others just watching in fascination as the situation spiraled completely out of control. That's when things got physical. I'm still not entirely sure who moved first. Later, witnesses would give conflicting accounts. But somehow, in the space between one heated exchange and the next, both mothers ended up grabbing for the same decorative centerpiece on a nearby table. The centerpiece was one of Patricia's elevated suggestions, a tall, expensive arrangement of autumn branches, white roses, and cascading ribbons in a heavy crystal vase. In retrospect, it was basically a weapon waiting to happen. Let go, Mom demanded, pulling on one side of the arrangement. I commissioned this design. Patricia shot back, yanking from the other side. The vase shattered. Water, flower petals, and crystal shards exploded across the floor. Both women stumbled backward from the impact, Patricia's heel catching in the hem of her cocktail dress. She went down hard, taking an entire table's worth of play settings with her. Mom rushed forward, whether to help or continue the confrontation, I'll never know. But Patricia, apparently thinking Mom was coming to press her advantage, grabbed a handful of wedding cake from the dessert table and flung it in Mom's direction. The cake hit Mom square in the chest, covering her navy blue mother-of-the-bride dress in buttercream frosting and fondant flowers. For a moment, she just stood there, stunned, with vanilla cake sliding down her front. Then she picked up the nearest champagne bottle. Stop! I screamed, but it was too late. Mom didn't throw the champagne bottle. She opened it. The cork flew across the room, striking one of the groomsmen in the shoulder. Champagne erupted everywhere, soaking the tablecloth, the remaining centerpieces, and several unfortunate guests who'd been trying to intervene. Patricia, still on the floor but far from defeated, grabbed a handful of dinner rolls from the bread basket and began pelting Mom with sourdough projectiles. That's when the hotel security arrived. Apparently, someone had called for help when the yelling started. 2 uniformed guards rushed into the reception hall just in time to see my mother wielding champagne like a weapon while my mother-in-law hurled baked goods from her position on the floor. Ladies, the larger security guard shouted. Step away from each other. Both mothers froze, suddenly aware that their private battle had become a very public spectacle. The reception hall looked like a war zone. Broken glass, scattered flowers, cake debris, champagne puddles, and dinner rolls littered the floor. Half the guests were filming with their phones while the other half tried to clean up or console crying children who'd been scared by the chaos. I was still standing at the head table in my wedding dress, watching my perfect day dissolve into complete insanity. Mom, I said quietly. Patricia. Please. Both women looked at me, then at each other, then at the destruction they created. The fight went out of them all at once. Mom's shoulders sagged as she realized what had happened. Patricia struggled to stand up with as much dignity as she could manage with cake in her hair and her dress torn. Sarah, Mom began, her voice breaking. Sweetheart, I'm so sorry. I never meant. We should go, Patricia interrupted, trying to smooth down her ruined outfit. David, we should leave before this gets any worse. Nobody's going anywhere, I said, surprised by the steadiness of my own voice. We're going to clean up this mess, apologize to our guests, and figure out how to salvage what's left of my wedding day. The next hour was a blur of damage control. Hotel staff swept up glass and mopped floors while guests helped reset tables and salvage decorations. The photographer, bless her professional soul, managed to capture some surprisingly beautiful candid shots of family members working together to repair the chaos. Both mothers disappeared to clean up and change clothes. David and I retreated to a quiet corner to process what had just happened. I can't believe they did that, he said, still in shock. I mean, I knew they didn't like each other, but this is what happens when two strong-willed women decide to have a territory battle at their children's wedding, I replied, feeling strangely calm now that the crisis had passed. The question is, what do we do now? We could have ended the reception right there. We could have sent everyone home and tried to pretend the whole thing hadn't happened. But looking around the room, I realized something unexpected. Our guests were bonding over the shared experience of witnessing the most dramatic mother-in-law confrontation in family history. David's college friends were comparing phone footage with my work colleagues. The older relatives were telling stories about other family gathering disasters they'd witnessed over the years. Children were drawing pictures of the food fight on cocktail napkins. Everyone was laughing, talking, and connecting in ways that formal wedding receptions rarely inspire. You know what? I said to David. Let's keep going. This is still our wedding day, and these are still the people we love most in the world. So what if it's not perfect? It's definitely memorable. David grinned, the first genuine smile I'd seen from him all day. You're amazing, you know that? When both mothers returned to the reception, Mom in a borrowed dress from my aunt, Patricia in a hotel robe with a scarf artfully draped over the torn sections, I made them sit at the same table. Here's what's going to happen, I announced to the room, channeling my best nurse in charge of a chaotic pediatric ward energy. We're going to dance, eat what's left of the cake, and celebrate the fact that David and I are married despite our mother's best efforts to derail the proceedings. The room erupted in laughter and applause. But first, I continued, looking directly at Mom and Patricia, you two are going to apologize to each other and to everyone here for turning my wedding into dinner theater. Both women looked mortified, but they complied. Patricia went first, acknowledging that her comments had been inappropriate and hurtful. Mom followed with her own apology for letting the situation escalate into physical comedy. Then something unexpected happened. As they were apologizing, they began to realize how ridiculous the whole thing had been. Patricia started giggling when she mentioned the dinner rolls. Mom burst out laughing when she described the champagne cork incident. Within minutes, they were both crying with laughter over the absurdity of their behavior. I can't believe I threw bread at you, Patricia gasped between giggles. I can't believe I used champagne as a weapon, Mom replied, wiping tears from her eyes. The rest of the reception was unlike any wedding celebration I'd ever attended. The formal timeline went out the window. People danced whenever they felt like it. The remaining cake was eaten communally, with everyone sharing pieces and laughing about the earlier food fight. The photographer captured incredibly natural, joyful moments that never would have happened in a perfectly choreographed event. David's grandmother, who was 93 and had seen everything, declared it the most entertaining wedding she'd ever attended. My teenage nieces posted Instagram stories calling it iconic and legendary. Even the hotel staff seemed charmed by how the evening had evolved. The night ended with both mothers working together to pack up the surviving decorations and coordinate rides home for elderly relatives. They weren't best friends, but they'd found a grudging respect for each other's fierce protectiveness of their children. Your mother has quite an arm, Patricia admitted to me as we waited for the elevator to the bridal suite. I haven't been in a food fight since summer camp. Your aim with those dinner rolls was impressive, Mom replied. I haven't dug flying bread since your father's nephews were toddlers. 3 years later, the wedding is still legendary in both families. New relatives get initiated with stories about the great centerpiece battle of 2025. The photographer's candid shots from the aftermath are some of our favorite wedding photos because they show real emotions and genuine connections rather than posed perfection. Mom and Patricia aren't exactly friends, but they found their rhythm as co-grandmothers in waiting. They channel their competitive energy into spoiling David and me rather than competing with each other. Patricia helps Mom understand the finer points of wine selection for family dinners. Mom teaches Patricia her famous techniques for managing difficult personalities. skills that apparently transfer well to demanding salon clients. The marriage itself has been everything we hoped for and more. David and I learned early on that we could handle crisis together, support each other through family drama, and find humor in even the most chaotic situations. Our relationship was stress-tested by wedding planning and emerged stronger than ever. Sometimes people ask if I regret not eloping, if I wish I'd avoided the whole dramatic spectacle. The answer is no. That crazy, imperfect, memorable day taught me something important about love and family. Perfection is overrated, but authenticity is priceless. My wedding day wasn't the elegant, sophisticated celebration that either mother had envisioned. It was messy, unpredictable, and absolutely genuine. It was a day when people showed their true colors, worked through conflict, and ultimately chose love over pride. It was perfectly, chaotically, unforgettably us. And honestly, I wouldn't change a thing. Hit subscribe if you've ever survived a family gathering that should come with its own documentary crew.